Hey gamers, this is Calamity Code, back with Gamers Among Us to talk about some of our favorite alternate history timelines in video games. It's always fun to see different takes on how the world could have been different with just one small change. The butterfly effect is something we've seen explored a million times in different forms of media, but I personally feel like we don't get enough of it in games. What would things be like nowadays if George Washington never became president? If Thomas Edison never became an inventor, if Berners-Lee, inventor of the internet as we know it, never decided to pursue his dream. Let it be noted, I did consider adding a zombie game or two like The Last of Us to this list because technically a new muted virus infecting the population would count as alternate history, but I tried to keep to more realistic approaches. So let's get into it. 5 of our favorite games that explored alternate history. Number 5. Resistance. The end of World War I was brought on by the Treaty of Versailles, which created peace between the Allied powers and Germany. We won't bother you with a history lesson, but because of this treaty essentially punishing Germany, we got, as a result, Hitler and his Nazi Defense Force. His goal was to take back the land they lost and re-establish Germany as a world power. In the Resistance universe, though, a European trade organization is formed after the conclusion of World War I, which essentially defeats any need for Germany to rise up and take over. Following years of actual peace, the Earth faces an entirely different kind of threat, an alien invasion. Okay, this one is a stretch because the alien invasion could have happened no matter the result of the world wars, and really at any time in history. It didn't though, and we get to see some really interesting ways that this result to the First World War, and the invasion following, could have affected the 20th century world. How would the European Union work together to defend against aliens that have rooted themselves in Russia? How would this new world work to find a cure for the aliens' virus that they use to infect humans and turn them into puppets? In Resistance, we get to see that all play out. You take control of Sergeant Nathan Hale of the US Army, as you aid Europe in the fight against these extraterrestrial invaders. What really invites my curiosity is how things could have gone without the alien invasion in this timeline. Tell us what you think. Number 4. BioShock. This series is one we recently had on another list, as a game series that we think needs a reboot. However, putting aside how great of a game series it really is, it has an intriguing world and tons of lore for you to explore. So where exactly is the alternate history? I'm glad you asked. You did ask, right? Well, either way. In the 1940s, a business magnate named Andrew Ryan decided he wanted to create a utopia outside of the government's reach. He figured this would be a place where the most elite men and women could flourish without morality or laws holding back their creativity and motivation. He cut off contact with the surface world, and his utopia, named Rapture, stayed hidden from the world as its inhabitants, now isolated, flourished in the world of science. What's great about this story is that you get to see how a businessman from the 1940s would create his own utopia. Everything is very steampunk. Machinery is extravagant and clumsy, but mostly effective, and even simple objects come off as very sci-fi inspired. What would a submarine utopia look like a few decades later? What would it look like if it were built in our time? Would that even be possible? It's such a fun idea, and BioShock proudly shows off its crafty take on it. Number 3. Fallout. For one of the more prominent and well-known features on this list, we have Fallout. I don't think any alternate history list would be complete without at least a mention of this AAA franchise set in a post-apocalyptic Earth. So following World War II, the transistor is never invented in this timeline. Being the fundamental building block of modern electronics, this leaves the world to depend on alternate forms of technology and power. This leads to a civilization that depends on nuclear-powered cars and directed energy weapons. Citizens of the United States, as a result, never quite move on from the fashion and the trends of the 1950s. This is why Pip-Boys, for example, have such outdated screens but such advanced technology. What this all culminates in is an energy crisis caused by the depletion of petroleum reserves. in the year 2052, a war begins, and in 2077, a 2-hour nuclear exchange ends the war along with most of humanity. This post-apocalyptic world is where we find our many protagonists throughout the series. The idea that one missed invention could cause such a drastic change in the world is bewildering but somewhat believable. That really is the concept behind the butterfly effect after all, and the original creators of the Fallout universe laid a foundation for one of the best alternate history imaginings ever. Number 2. Assassin's Creed. For number 2 on this list, we have Ubisoft's long-running series, Assassin's Creed. This one is unique because it actually involves a race of ancient peoples that are precursors to humanity. Referred to most commonly as the first civilization, they were much more intelligent and early humans looked at them as gods. These beings created relics which contained supernatural powers. Finding these relics in the modern day is the entire basis of the series. What's most interesting about this is the way that it folds into actual history. Greek gods we know of, such as Aphrodite and Hephaestus, as well as Roman god Juno, Egyptian god Osiris, and many more, were actually beings of this first civilization. Even Adam and Eve are worked into this amazing tale, being hybrids of both humans and the first civilization. All of this is discovered through dozens of stories told in the universe, and the attention to detail is incredible. There's even another layer to this worth mentioning. All of the assassinations you conduct throughout the series, as you control all these different people throughout history, are based on real deaths. The details and timelines of these actual real-life deaths of actual real-life people are followed as closely as possible. However, as you well know, each death is twisted in such a way that makes it so that the assassins that you control are responsible for the deaths. The way that these details alter history in-game is subtle compared to the other entries on this list, but it's extremely fascinating to learn about. Besides there being no Abstergo industries attempting to take over the world, who's to say that some of these major figures in history weren't actually assassinated by a secret organization? I guess we'll never know. Number 1. Wolfenstein. For the top spot on this list, we have my personal favorite alternate history timeline. This comes from Wolfenstein, a series full of action-packed Nazi killing that actually has a lot more depth to it than you'd think. For this list, we're going to focus specifically on the latest version of this world, which started with 2014's Wolfenstein: The New Order by Machine Games. What kicks off the story of this game is a popular concept for writers, an alternate history in which the Axis powers, consisting of Germany, Italy, and Japan, win the Second World War. That's right. For those unfamiliar with these games, you're not fighting World War II Nazis. You're fighting Nazis that won the war and took over America. What follows is an amazingly detailed look at what America might have looked like after a successful Nazi invasion. I think what makes this story my favorite is that this could have actually happened. Hitler sure believed it would. What we end up facing in Nazi America is more than just a controlling dictatorship. It's the result of Nazi terrorism and inhumane experimentation gone wild. Unchecked by a United Nations or a democratic government, lead scientists in the Nazi regime are free to push the limits of morality to create biological weapons to terrifying ends. We have animals and soldiers fitted with painful android-like contraptions meant to enhance their strength and control their actions. We have human brains forcefully removed from bodies just to be put inside machines as a source of power. When you really dig into what's going on in these games, it's made abundantly clear what the stakes really were 90 years ago at the start of World War II. Alright gamers, that's all we have for you today, but we hope you enjoyed the list we put together. The world is such a fragile thing, and we really can't comprehend just how lucky we are to be where we are until we start to imagine a world with different outcomes to history's biggest events. What did you think? We'd love to hear from you, so join us on Facebook or hit up the Discord to talk it out with us. We've also got a new website in its infancy that we'd love for you to check out at gamersamongus.com. User registration should be up soon so that you can create your very own GAU account and customize your profile. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and game on.